Hello, I'm Jacob Pasterfield, all the way from Kelowna, BC. I am a musician, I'm a music teacher, I am a music therapist, and just general lover of music and sound. I was raised in a house where we all just loved music. Both of my parents just love music and have been playing it my whole life. Um, my dad was always spinning vinyl or playing CDs, and I very vividly remember a lot of dashboard drum solos and car ride air guitar solos, and it just really helped affirm and create a really deep love for music within myself. So I played piano as a kid, but instead of going to my music lessons, which were literally like my backyard. Like I hopped the fence to my backyard neighbor, and but I fell out of it because I was a little bit more interested in cartoons and video games than I was in putting in some practice and diligence for my piano playing. So that kind of fell away. But then later in life, I got a drum kit for a birthday, and I started a band like that day. And literally, I'm still in a band with one of those dudes. And yeah, so I got a chance to just play a bunch of music, and I was doing the rock and roll thing. I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what life is, and just played in a bunch of bands, and I got to play all over Canada and the States, and play music on stage for folks, and do tours and festivals, and get into all sorts of rowdy business involving Jägermeister and laser beams, and that was great, but I would just get home from these concerts and these shows and these tours, and like it was so much fun, but I just always felt like there was a lot more happening than what we were really kind of tapping into. I felt like we were just kind of like the tip of the iceberg as far as like what music is, and like why does it create such a deep effect on us, and why is it so entertaining? Why is it so engaging? Why can it just create so many different emotions and connections and elicit emotional responses from things? And so that kind of sparked a lot of my interest. I remember I was, I think, 14, and I came home from a bit of a harder day at school, and I put on some music, and I remember everything I was stressed about and angry about and frustrated about and confused about just kind of like melted away. And that's when I kind of thought to myself, if I can do for other people what music is doing for me right now, then that's my idea of success. So I went to school for sound therapy in California at the Globe Institute. And I got an amazing opportunity to learn from just so many amazing teachers, people who had been in the field for 50 plus years. And I mean, music therapy itself, I think its origins stemmed to about 1902, was one of the first documented therapeutic exercises for music to calm the mind and body and help people move through emotional states of mind. But even if you go far back enough into ancient Greece, it's said that Hippocrates, who was a doctor and philosopher, he used to prescribe musical medication for certain people. And even the series of musical theory that stemmed from Greece involved what were called the modes. And the modes are ways that we can arrange notes of a scale to elicit different kinds of emotions, and they would have different kind of scales and different kind of chords and notes that they would use for funerals versus weddings versus parties versus political organizations and meetings and community gatherings. There were different forms of music for different circumstances and different emotional states. And so music has been used as far back as we can kind of look to create community, to create connection, to serve as a vehicle of self-exploration and self-expression. And not only does it sound cool and make for a really good time, but there's actually a ton of science behind how all of that works. And so I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a video here describing what I do, what I've learned, and some of the tools, techniques, and tips that you can use to kind of calm your nervous system, to create self-expression, and to just feel a little bit more connected with yourself and people around you. So I'm looking forward to sharing this next little bit with you here. So a lot of the time when I talk to people about music therapy, everyone goes, "What is that?" Which for me is always silly. I mean, it's silly because I've been like interested in this for like more than 20 years, but it's just, they're kind of two words that we don't hear beside each other really often, even though your body has an inherent understanding that that's a thing. I mean, like, if you've ever made a playlist, that's kind of an exercise in music therapy. What you're doing is you are curating sounds to elicit some form of emotional response. Like, if you can think of your pump up jams, like, those get you in a state. They get you in a state of mind and an emotional state that you want, right? Like, you're about to go to the club, or you're going to a party, or, you know, whatever it may be. You get those jams on, and it just gets you lifted, gets you going. And alternatively, when you're going through something, you can just put on, you know, that old sad songs and just like, you know, sink into how you're actually feeling and allow what you're doing to really be present and also reflected musically. And so that can kind of lead to like breakthroughs. And like, honestly, like, if you have put on some music that just really gets you in your heart and like you can have a good cry, like, that's a really good emotional regulation tool that you have already used. So that's kind of what music therapy is to me. It's just the way that sounds can really evoke an emotional response. How we can use different kinds of sounds to kind of interact with our body on deeper levels than just thought alone. And I mean, the benefits of music are just wild. It's insane how good it is for the brain and body to be participating in music, whether it be through a creational aspect or even just from an enjoyment aspect. When listening to music, like in headphones or even in real life, where we have sound waves hitting both of our ears. When that happens, our brain is sending signals back and forth to these different parts of our brain, and it actually helps synchronize a lot of neurological movement. Mozart and classical music and Baroque music have specific vibrational relationships within them that your body responds to very, very beneficially. When we're listening to music in stereo, it can kind of help balance the chemicals in between our left and right hemispheres of the brain over the corpus callosum. One of the believed reasons for mental fatigue comes from your brain waves acting so intensely and so often that your brain can't balance the sodium and potassium levels across the hemispheres of your brain. And sodium and potassium are very integral for osmosis, which is what allows your brain to both release and receive different kind of chemicals that will then be the fuel for its activity. And certain kinds of music really help balance these hemispheres and can kind of help entrain your brain waves into different states, which allows your brain to just regulate itself again. Listening to certain types of music is an exercise that helps encourage symmetry in higher brain functions. There's been tons of studies where they, you know, just blast Mozart to a group of people and blast heavy metal or blast, you know, different kind of music to different kind of groups. And you can actually see these positive effects happen within the body. Something about the way music was written, you know, back in classical periods, the pacing and the relationship of sounds and vibrations just created these really soothing effects. And I'm not saying that can't happen with pop music and that can't happen with heavy metal music, because that's not the case. When you like certain kinds of music, your body just responds beneficially. And I don't know where, you know, musical preference comes from. I believe it's probably environmental. Probably what you were introduced to when you were younger might be some of the things that kind of helped create that inclination towards certain kinds of music. And through hooking up people to EEGs and EKGs, we can find that if you like the music, your body really responds to it really well. So there's a lot going on neurologically and biologically when we're listening to music. There's so much taking place. One of the other things that can start to happen is So we look at music as a series of vibrations. Vibrations is kind of just the way that we describe energy. All energy that we can observe so far has moves in waves or particles, but that's a whole other thing. We're not going to get into that today. But these waveforms, it's this kind of S-shaped curve you've seen in science class before. And a way to kind of describe that is if you were to zoom in onto the nucleus of any cell, just of anything. You zoom right into that center, and around that center are all of the different moving pieces, right? Electrons, protons, neutrinos, like all these different parts and components that create what that cell is. Everything is spinning around the nucleus. And so if we take that spin and we just put it in a different perspective, so we twist it on its side and that spin becomes a circle. And if you just kind of create a line as that circle goes in just an up and down way, that kind of creates this sine wave. Right? Or that S, that cool thing that all, sine, cosine, and tangent, all that stuff I ignored in math school was really about. It's about the functions of the wave. And so the physics of wave vibrations is just the foundational way that we describe music and sound. So when we get any, form of pulsation of energy, electromagnetic radiation, depending on how fast it goes, different parts of our body respond to it. So sound is specifically between 12 vibrations to 20,000 vibrations per second. And most folks can't quite hear that high. That's like kind of dog whistle territory when you get really high. And so all sound exists within that kind of spectrum. And then when it goes beyond that, it becomes ultrasound. And then there are other tiers of the ways that we describe different forms of vibration. But eventually it kind of keeps going and going and going until it becomes the visible spectrum of vibration, which light and color are energy vibrating at hundreds of millions of vibrations per second. There's so many vibrations per second, we don't even bother calculating it with vibrations per second anymore. We start to measure the actual wavelength of those, the size of those wavelengths in angstroms. So there's, these really direct relationships between sound and color, and they actually follow a lot of the same growth ratios. So there's so much going on with sound and with vibration in general. And so the ways that it's kind of looked at from a therapeutic standpoint is we look at two different things. We look at what's called resonance. And so resonance is kind of the humming of the materials that any atom, any piece of matter is made off of. And a good kind of way to look at it is thinking about things like singing bowls or bells or even drums. When you go and hit these instruments, what happens is that hitting actually pushes the molecules back. They snap back to their original place. That snapping back creates a vibrational release. And so that pressurizes sound waves, which then travel to our ears through the tympanic membrane and all of the cilia, the ear hairs. They, interpret that information, send it to your brain, and your brain perceives the sound. And so the way that we kind of look at it is resonance is just the way that things are vibrating. And it's kind of like the way I look at it is everything is singing. Everything here is just kind of singing. I mean, we don't look at it that way because it's not always musical, but everything has a consistent kind of home note frequency, this vibrational epicenter. And through that epicenter is where that kind of core note stems from. And so what happens is these specific kind of vibrations of things that exist on this planet, your voice is creating vibrations when we're hearing music. All of these vibrations are being created. And they just create this giant array of different kinds of sounds that we hear. But what happens is your body responds to those waves, right? Our ears, sorry, mine are hidden behind this microphone. I wanted to try a little bit of a different recording approach here, but our ears receive these sounds and they kind of help us understand what's happening in the world around us. But beyond your ears, your heartbeat and your brain waves are also responding to the world around us. We are consistently taking in information from our environment, and that is then informing us about kind of what's happening. So our ears are this very richly defined, evolutionary tool that allows us to get a good understanding from the world around us. And what happens is there's this law this law of physics called the law of entrainment. And what that really kind of talks about is the way that very, very consistent vibrations in nature will encourage less consistent vibrations to either rise up or slow down a little bit to kind of match the pace of that consistency. So when you're listening to a song or you're listening to a performance of some kind of music, what happens is your heartbeat within 15 to 30 seconds of listening to a song will kind of either raise its heart rate a little bit or lower your heart rate a little bit so that it can kind of match what is happening around it. And then same thing with your brain waves. Within 45 seconds to a minute, your brain waves will start to actually synchronize to the pacing of what you're listening to. And so this for me is kind of just, I kind of call this like rapport. This is like vibrational rapport. If you're ever like just vibing with someone or vibing with something, what's happened is your whole body has created a synchronistic response to the vibrational information of the world around it. And so that's the way that we can kind of utilize these vibrations to kind of move through emotional states or to even regulate emotional states with different kind of approaches. So that's, kind of one of the main branches that music kind of starts to affect us as our body starts to synchronize with the world around us. Another thing that happens quite often is there is this concept called a sympathetic resonance, which is where if the vibration of a thing gets close to another thing that has the same vibration, they kind of just inherently want to sing together. It starts activating, releasing stored kinetic energy that those molecules are making as they're spinning. It releases a vibration. And that's actually one of the ways that we how we galvanize kidney stones with ultrasound. We blast, the ultrasound frequency to these kidney stones, and very brilliant scientists have figured out what frequency that has that effect at. And so what happens is it starts to shake the molecules that these kidney stones are made out of so much that they actually eventually dissipate. The force of the release of that energy is stronger than the bonds holding those cells together, so they break. Same thing with the opera singers and those wine glasses. So entrainment and resonance are very important parts of how your body responds to sound. And then the other thing that is really amazing is the body, because the body's amazing. Our beautiful bodies, they do so many cool things. It's amazing. It just happens, and you never even need to think about it. It just does. So I was mentioning a little earlier about how your ears are a very highly defined evolutionary tool for helping us understand and navigate the world around us. So this stems from, like kind of hunter-gatherer communities where we were still kind of in competition with nature, right? We would have natural enemies who, would attack our sleeping tribes or, our young ones. And so our ears developed a sensitivity to a lot of certain things. Surprise, loud noises. Your ears actually have a very amazing ability to understand where a sound is coming from. And that it includes so much of the different hemispheres and parts of the brain coming active to make that happen. Human ears have a direct sensitivity to the frequency that babies and children cry at. So our ears take these environmental cues and help us mentally figure out what's happening if, our eyes can't see the threat. Our ears are really connected to our nervous system. And so your nervous system is a protective mechanism. There's among many things, but one of the things our nervous system helps us kind of understand is if we are in danger. So, imagine hearing the lion sneaking up on the tribe. Your ears would connect into whatever that was, and your senses would become activated. Your sympathetic nervous system would become activated, and so that would start releasing serotonin, cortisol, adrenaline through your bloodstream, so you could hit your fight or flight response system, whether you're going to run away or start fighting. And then your body is, producing chemicals to actually help that happen better. So sympathetic nervous system gets engaged. Then what needs to happen is our parasympathetic nervous system needs to be engaged. And what that does is we've reached that place of safety. And usually there's some kind of physical exertion or physical kind of activity that would happen to let your body have a chance to kind of move through all of those chemicals that have been released. So, you take the gazelle running from the lion. As it's running, its body has an opportunity to get rid of all of these extra chemicals and these excitatory, like they kind of create some excitement molecularly and cellularly within your body, so you can run faster, you can jump higher, and that increases your chances of survival. But through that running, after the gazelle or the prey animal found its home, found its safety, would start to breathe its way through, and that parasympathetic nervous system would be engaged, which allows the body to get back into those rest and digest states that are really important. However, in our modern day and age, that is not necessarily the nervous system response that we get the opportunity to participate in. Because of social situations and different circumstances, our body won't always have an opportunity to hit that rest and digest state, because we are very, very often getting activated by the world around us. There's sounds, there's buzzing, there's electricity in the walls, there is electromagnetic radiation coming from things, there is noise of the street, noise of your neighbors, noise, right? There are all sorts of different things that can kind of activate your nervous system, but your nervous system is just responding. Your nervous system doesn't have like a logic center that can go, oh no, wait a minute, I know that that's an irrational thing to get worked up. Like if my dog ever barks at someone who knocks on the door, like my body goes, ugh, and I know it's my dog. He's just saying hello, essentially. But the sound hits that trigger, and my body I can't tell my nervous system to be like, oh man, just chill, don't worry about it. What actually ends up happening is I have to go through those processes of activating my parasympathetic nervous system. So your vagus nerve is one of your body's main nervous systems. It's kind of one of the parts of the nervous system, but it's one of the largest networks that we have of different nerves and nerve endings. It touches just about every major organ, and it also makes this little cross across your voice box as you speak. So when we are in an activated state, the vagus nerve and what's considered vagal tone will allow our body to come back into that parasympathetic nervous system state, that nervous system response that we're looking for to help us kind of soothe and regulate our way through that activation. So the vagus nerve is very integral in connecting all of these things, and your voice activates it as we speak. Even just making any kind of noise activates that vagus nerve. And if you think about it, that would make sense, because you wouldn't be able to create a nice, even, smooth sound if you were in danger, right? So for me to go, I wouldn't be able to do that if I'm being chased by a lion. So specific kinds of stimulus like that, consistent calming stimulus to your vagus nerve, will then inform your brain and your body that it is okay. You are safe once again to come back into a regulatory state. So by even the act of humming, by the act of speaking, by the act of singing, we do have an opportunity to kind of allow our body some space to feel safe. When we take breath and turn it into sound, it actually stimulates the nerve fibers of our body, which allows us, again, another opportunity to move all of those different chemicals that have been stored in our body from excitation and activation. It gives them an opportunity to just kind of flush it out. Same thing with dance, same thing with exercise and sport. All of these different physical activities really cater to your body's ability to move through those circumstances. So, using the voice as a regulatory tool is one of the main things that I really kind of work with. And it's one of the things that I really encourage everyone to work with. Just because it is so simple. It is something that anyone can do. You do not need professional training. You do not need anything other than the ability to just make a sound. So when we were talking about entrainment, again, the consistency is what will create a precedent for your body to start synchronizing to. And there are a lot of different kind of tones we can use. And these tones, if we even think back to our own upbringing and our own environmental connection to the world around us, it really starts to make sense. You can think about tones like, ooh, ooh, like the cooing of a mother speaking to her baby, or, when you feel relaxed, when you see something very beautiful. I really like, And just elongating the letter M. I mean, there's so many things you could do, and I think that really quickly becomes evident how powerful these kind of approaches and techniques can be. And again, I'm always just so amazed at the profound simplicity that using your voice, it's so simple, and I'm always amazed by it. It's just so easy to use your voice, and there are so many physiological benefits that come from it. There are so many mental and emotional and neurological benefits that come from it. And we grow up in a culture where it is not like okay for everyone to sing. You know, we've got this very like, American Idol approach where if you're not stunningly amazing at singing, you're not supposed to. And that's very damaging. That's a very damaging mentality to have, because your body doesn't go, oh, excuse me, I think you're a little flat on that humming tone. When you played the piano earlier today, you missed two notes, so you're just not going to get any of that benefits. You're not going to get any of the physiological responses that are so beautiful and beneficial. Your body doesn't do that. That's a kind of societal and egotistical imprint that we've kind of been subject to for a really long time. And I think it's time for that to stop. I think we should all recognize that you don't have to be a good singer. You don't have to be able to sing in concerts and sing perfectly on pitch and have perfect pitch to reclaim your voice and reclaim the power that your voice has within it. So a lot of it just stems to really understanding the way the body responds to things and creating specific circumstances to give the body an opportunity to move into those states. When you hear a sound, we're actually hearing a lot of sounds mixed together. Our ears gravitate towards the fundamental tone or the largest peak and valley of the harmonic structure of a sound wave. But sound moves so quickly, we hear a lot more than just one tone. Like as you're hearing my voice right now, there's that main central tone, that one right there, that we kind of hear the most, but there's so much more happening, in your ears and your brain are receiving so much more information. And depending on which of the harmonics, which are the peaks and valleys of a continuing sound wave, depending on the collection of the strongest peaks and valleys and whether they're the odd or even numbered harmonics within a sound, will create something with odd harmonics, which gives us a little bit of edge. That's where you hear rasp in people's voices, or things with really even amounts of harmonics within a sound will be very pleasing, very soothing, very pearly, very operatic, very crisp, very clear. You can think about singers like Tom Waits or Mariah Carey. That's a very good description off of an even sounding voice and an odd numbered harmonic voice. So we can use these specific sounds to either activate or to calm. And so that's kind of the main categories that we look at sound in. They're either activating or they're calming. And it's very important to have a balance. One of the most amazing and prolific music therapists is Alfred Tomatis, and he looks at the world as in everything. Every frequency is a nutrient. And so in the same way that with our diet, to have a fully balanced diet, we need a rich array of different kinds of organic information. The same thing happens with sound. So when we're introducing different kinds of sounds into our life, both into our body through the music we listen to, the music we go see, the music we create, even the tones of voice, it's really helpful and beneficial for you to explore the sounds of your own voice, whether you be singing or just speaking. From the sounds of our friends' voices, from the sounds of the world around us, it's really important, I find, to have a wide variety of diversity within your sonic palette or your sonic diet. And it also kind of goes to say that it's really important to pay attention to what you're listening to as well. I think that there is a real big opportunity for people to really sink into different kind of emotional states, responding to different kinds of music. However, the potential lies within the fact that we might be overeating in certain kinds of music, which might not give our ears and our nervous system an opportunity to kind of calibrate itself. So the things we listen to and the sounds we make themselves are always having an effect on our body and our mind. And the main goal of music therapy is to specifically choose things that will cater to different kind of physiological and neurological and emotional responses. So to give you a little bit of an example off of one of the main kind of modalities that's used a lot in music therapy and sound healing is something called sound baths or sound meditations. I generally don't like to say sound bath because people have literally expected me to like put them in a tub or something, which is not what I'm here to do. Like the idea is you're getting bathed in sound waves. It's like we're creating this, pool of sound and you're, taking a dip in it. Not, I want to show up to your house with a clawfoot tub and, ring a bunch of gongs over you in the water. But just like that being said though, like that might be kind of fun because, water allows sound to travel through it and conducts it and it amplifies it. So I don't know, there's probably something there. So maybe we'll experiment with that one day. I just got to get a portable clawfoot tub ready. But so in this next little clip that I'm going to show you, I'm just playing a couple singing bowls. And so singing bowls are bells. They're just bells. They're called standing bells. And what's happening is as I hit that striker around it, what I'm doing is I'm triggering the resonance of the that bowl itself, that bell. And so that's what produces the sound. And as you just kind of rub the outside of it, again, we're exciting that sympathetic vibration that exists within the molecular structure of the cells themselves. They're releasing that stored kinetic energy. It moves sound. Our ears hear it, and it creates these cool effects. And so I find a lot of the time that they can almost be a little intense, but it's in the same way that while, you're practicing yoga or you're exercising, the idea is you want to put yourself in that kind of window of tolerance and just kind of recognize that we will be going through some intensity. But what we do is by allowing our mind and our hearts to just kind of calm through these, more, activating sounds, it helps us build resilience in the understanding. Because there is no way in this world that you can kind of get around hardship. We can't get around uncomfortability. We can't get around pain. But what we can do is we can increase our body and our mind's capacity to navigate it, to sustain it. And actually, that reminds me of a really cool experiment that I was reading about. I can't remember where. I think it was somewhere in Washington, but a bunch of botanists and biologists or arborists or whoever the people who work with trees are called, they created this really beautiful environment. It was like this giant geodesic dome where they could control the environmental stressors for this group of trees. And they strived to create the ideal growing environment for all of these trees. And so they did that. They had all these beautiful trees and it was perfect temperature and perfect humidity and very little wind and these, trees just lived this really beautiful, cushy life and nothing was problematic. But what ended up happening is the trees would grow to a certain height and they would just fall down. They would just fall over. It wasn't from anything. They just kind of hit this point and would fall over. And the scientists found out that the reason why is because without any kind of external necessity, these trees wouldn't develop deeper root systems. And those deeper root systems would be what sustained its growth and allowed it to grow to a certain place. So, unfortunately, there will be difficulty and hardness in life. But fortunately, we are very miraculously equipped with a whole bunch of tools to navigate it. So these bowls that I'll be playing in this next little bit, I just kind of go back and forth between the two. And what I want you to do is just listen. Open or closed eyes, doesn't really matter, whatever you feel better with. Headphones is best, or good speakers, something other than your phone. But hey, that'll still work. I just want you to pay attention to the sounds. Just connect to your breathing, breathe in and out just like a regular meditation. Or another thing you can do is you can just listen to the waves, is what I call it. You'll really be able to hear it in the Tibetan bowl. It has this real, right? There's this undulation that kind of happens between it. And personally, when I hear that, it really is like a wave, and I just kind of follow it, and it'll, I don't know, maybe elicit some kind of story. It'll produce a calming effect. It will make me think about a certain part of my body, or maybe a certain memory or moment or experience or something, right? Like the idea is just experience whatever this is to you. You can follow it or keep it really passive. But what I really recommend doing is just listen to your body and just kind of try and pay attention to what happens and see if you can feel it. See if you can kind of start to pay attention to your heartbeat. If there's any change in your heartbeat or your brain waves, you notice yourself calming and slowing down. Whatever the case may be, the idea for this next little exercise is all you got to do is listen. So enjoy. I'm always really fond of that. So, I mean, everyone's going to have a different emotional response, a different internal response. So ask yourself, how did that feel? What happened? Did it do anything? Did it do nothing? Did you like it? Didn't like it? All of these things are just clues, right? There will be certain sounds that you do like and certain sounds that you don't like. And I mean, we can go into the mathematic structure of things. As I mentioned, I'm not really sure what creates interest and enjoyment out of different kinds of sounds, but it's just an inherent and personal thing. One of the things that does happen, which is quite amazing, is your subconscious mind is always connected to these sensory response systems within your body. So one of the things that your body will do as a defensive technique against triggering or aggressive sounds is your body will remember that they're difficult sounds for you to experience, and it will actually kind of push those frequencies or sounds out of the periphery of your hearing, making it harder for you to hear them. This part of the subconscious mind is called the sensor, and the sensor's job is to kind of almost like push away information or experiences that are hard or difficult or painful for us. And it's a very beautiful and merciful facet of the human experience, because we don't have to perpetually be, focusing on all the things that cause us pain and harm. And so it's actually pretty benevolent and pretty beautiful. However, it can become difficult because our nervous system will adapt to circumstances. But when we leave those activating circumstances into places that are safe and calm and peaceful, finally, your body won't really know that it's not in that safe space. So a lot of the time, people are like, oh, I'm not musical. No. Oh, I can't hold a beat. No. I think a lot of that really stems from what had happened in your past is you have maybe had some problematic sounds that really affected you internally and really kind of changed the emotional landscape that you had in responding to certain kinds of sounds. If you think about something like parents screaming over dinner, as a young kid, as an adolescent or a teenager, your ears will push those frequencies out of the periphery of your hearing because they were always stressful. They kept you in a triggered or an activated state. The tone of voice of an abusive partner or spouse. People who have lived in countries experiencing conflict, explosions, gunshots, loud noises can really, really create a damaging effect on the nervous system, and then your ability to respond and actually hear sounds. Like your ears will be pushing a lot of sounds away because it's connected those sounds to danger. So we leave these circumstances, but our body is still carrying forward these approaches. So this next little exercise that I do, for me, I found is a way for me to kind of recognize those kind of sounds that are maybe a little bit harder for me to hear based off of my stories and my traumas and whatever it may be. It's called a frequency sweep. And so this was actually taught to me by David Gibson, who is an amazing teacher and sound healer in San Francisco. And what we do is we're going to use the vibrato. Well, it's like a vibrato effect of our voice where we're going to be going up and down in pitch. And so this is a tool that I use really often. There's so many benefits from it. It helps me kind of connect back to my body. It helps me feel regulated and safe within my body. If I'm a very active dreamer, and if I've had a night where I've had crazy dreams or something and I can't quite really come back, from that dream kind of mentality, I guess, this is a really good way for me to kind of like anchor back into my body. And even just generally, it's a great way to start to learn how to explore your voice and to kind of hear the qualities and kinds of sounds you can make. Your voice is a unique thing. No two people have the exact same voices, kind of like snowflakes in the same sense. Our vocal cords, got these two beautiful flaps of skin in our throat, and that's how every single sound you make is produced, by sharing air that just miraculously exists on this planet and no other one, as far as we're, told and have found. And we just get to borrow that breath and we push it through our body, and that's every single word I've said stemmed from that process. So So what we do is you start with the lowest frequency, the lowest sound you can kind of make. And so what I encourage people to do is just play around and try and find that sound. And I call this the earth voice because this is really connected to the lowest sounds you can make. So the lowest physical densities of matters or physical material. And these tones I find really anchor me into the lower part of my body. And so you just gently tone or make a sound for the vowel So you just kind of play around and try and find that bottom, right? The lowness, you don't want to go into that kind of like rumbly, gritty territory. You don't want to go that low because your body can't really hold the note. And the idea is as we're holding the note, that's what's creating that consistency. And that consistency reminds our body that it is in fact safe. So we do want to find the lowest note that you can hold an elongated tone on. So, and so please this time, if you'd like, if you're watching this video, join on in with me. Just do a big inhale. And then UH. And obviously, we're breathing, and as we breathe, we oxygenate our body, and that helps blood flow go. And then you can also pay attention to, what happens to your voice as you have a little bit less breath capacity, as you tone a little bit more. I also really encourage people that as you're kind of getting into this, don't worry about what it sounds like. Because again, that's that kind of American Idol approach. Like, I really hope this sounds really good for all my fans. It's like, yeah, we do want to harmonize. We do want everything to sound good together. But if you're focusing on what it sounds like, you're not paying attention to what it feels like, and you're not paying attention to what is happening internally, which is the main point of all of this. If you're just listening externally, like the second point, like it has to sound a certain way, that's the opposite of this, right? Like, who told you what you were saying isn't beautiful? Like, there are no wrong notes. I mean, within relationship to another note, we might create discord versus harmony, but there's no real like wrong notes. It's just it's a vibration. It by itself is neither good nor bad. It's just there. And so these differences in vibrational relationships is what creates these physiological effects. So one last time, let's try and find that earth tone with UH. Big inhale. That makes me feel really calm all the time. It makes me feel really grounded. It makes me feel really rooted in my body. And the thing that's, like I said, I'm just always, so blown away by how simple these practices can be. And you can do that anywhere. You can do that in your car on like a lunch shift from work if you're getting stressed out by your boss or your clients or whatever the case may be. So that's the beginning. That's the floor, right? Like that's the bottom level of where we go. So the next step is your heart voice. And so the vowel associated with the heart center is AH. And so that's really what we're trying to go for when we do this little exercise is that AH. And I recommend putting your hands on your heart because what you want to do is as you're moving the pitch up and down with your voice, you want to really feel it activating, like right in the center, like right in that heart space, wherever you'd picture the kind of little center line where your heart is connected. I mean, obviously our heart's on the side, but if you think about along the central, the Shushumna Nadi, the central, pillar of your spine and your body, and your main conduit is an energy source as well. You want to look at that heart space. You want to put your hands right on top of it. And as you're doing this tone, you really want to make sure that you're centering the sound right in that space. So big inhale. And just AH, your heart sound. Pardon me. I find I love that sound. I love that tone. I think that that's super fun. That always makes me feel really, I don't grateful. It makes me feel just really like embodied. It makes me feel really present in the moment. I don't know, maybe it's, just me, but that always connects me to joy and gratitude. I'm always in those emotional states when I connect to that kind of space. And so for me, it's like, if love is a vibratory emotion, then what we're doing is we've just got love's phone number and we use our voice to just call it up, be like, hey love, how are you doing? It's like, oh, hey, I didn't know you were home today. I was going to swing by. And you're like, come on over, bro. And then love comes on in through the door and you feel it suddenly. So, poetic metaphor aside, that's kind of in essence what we're doing is we're activating those specific vibrational relationships that exist within you. We're accessing the heart space now, but we're just calling it out by, calling out by name. So please feel free to jump in with this one if you'd like. I find with this tone, I want to push my the pitch, the tone up higher. Right here in my throat is that's where I feel it when I'm speaking right now. Like it's really vibrating, like right here to right here in my voice. And so that's where I kind of want to push that tone. But the idea is I want it to sink right here. I want it to I really want to feel it here in my body. And so that's the main purpose behind these exercises, is to learn how to use your voice to feel how your voice is affecting different parts of your body. So big inhale. We're going to AH together. Even for fun, I like to do a higher one. That one for me sounds more joyful, but I feel it here. And then the lower one, I feel right here, but it's not as easy of a note for me to hit. But anyways, that's okay. So one more time, we're going to do your heart voice. One of the things I find really beautiful about music is one of the only activities that the main word we use to interact with it is called play. And so play, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to hurt anyone. No one's going to be hurt by you exploring your voice. Sure, some people may not like it, but that's a whole lot of a them problem. So that's the middle point. And then the next thing we do is the ceiling, or the sky voice, as it's been called. So we are going to use the vowel E, and you're going to try and hit the highest pitched sound you can make, which is very activating, very interesting, and it's very difficult to take yourself seriously when you are squealing as much as you can. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to find the ceiling. So big inhale. We're going to go E with the highest pitch you can make. Uses a lot of breath as well. And I also I can hold that one for a lot longer, but I mean, I'm sure most of you folks tuning in didn't tune in to hear me make those kind of noises, but too bad, here you are. Now I hope you're going to make them yourself. So big inhale. Highest note. Okay, so that's the idea. That's your floor, middle, and ceiling of your voice, right? And so here's the next step is we take those points and we tie them all together. So you're going to start at the lowest and you're going to go all the way to the highest note. And this is what's called frequency sweeping. And so what this does for me, like I said, really helps me feel really anchored and kind of connected back in with my body. And then Also helps you learn your voice. One of the things that I do is, because I've gotten more kind of used to this and connected to it, I can really feel where in my body the pitch of my voice is really affecting me. And so that's the main purpose behind this, is this will help you feel within your body the effects of different kinds of sounds, specifically the effect of your own voice. So we're going to go from the bottom note that we can make all the way to the highest. So big inhale. And we go bottom to top. I love it. I love it. I hope you enjoy it. You should do that. So try and align it with your breath cycle so that you literally like end as you're running out of air. You can hold that high note a little bit, but we want to kind of connect with the speed. Sorry. Also, don't be afraid to yawn. Yawning is your body's attempt to reclaim spent oxygen. And when we're really like pushing all of the breath out of our lungs as we tone, right? Your body just wants to intake more air. So don't be afraid of that. But so now what we're going to do is we're going to go from the top note all the way to the bottom. So big inhale. And top to bottom. So then, just for fun, real quick, bottom to top and top to bottom, all in one breath. Big inhale. Bottom, top to bottom. So, yeah, that's that. That's the frequency sweep. And like I said, it has been a really fun process for me to learn how deep of an impact that whole process can make on my whole body, kind of top to bottom. And I really recommend using these kind of tools. These tools are just really profound for helping you kind of access your body and calm down through the nervous system, and also just for the fun of exploring your own voice. Like your voice is a beautiful thing. No one has one like it, and you should sing. You should sing more. You should hum more. You should tone more. You should just be more connected to your voice. It's a beautiful thing that you can just do. Like you can just do. It's for free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's not going to hurt anyone. I mean, aside from you going right up to someone's ear and like screaming in it. And so just as a rule of thumb, maybe don't do that. But other than that, like I really, really, really invite anyone watching this to explore, to jump in. It will help release stress in your body, right? Like, and there's nothing like a good scream, right? Like if you ever try and scream, you want to yell, if you ever want to hum, like I recommend like hug someone and just like, it's just a nice thing. Use more sound, have more sound in your life. It's just a really cool thing. So that's a pretty brief overview of what I do. There's a lot more to it than that, and much, much, much deeper to go. But I mean, that's an hour. That's what happens in an hour, is we only get to have a kiss. It's just a tease, There's so much more to get into. I have different approaches for anxiety and depression and insomnia. I have different approaches for connecting to spirituality, connecting to your chakras, and learning how to move through blocked energy or stuck emotions, trauma release, and emotional release. There's so many outlets and applications for this, and I just feel really grateful and blessed in my life that this is what I get to do, and that I get to share this stuff with folks like yourself and folks from all over the place. So thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time out to kind of hear a little bit about what I do, and hopefully this created some resonance within you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My email is Jacob Pasterfield, JacobPasterfield @gmail.com. And you're welcome to send me a message, and I'll get back to it as soon as I can. But other than that, I hope you all are well. I hope you do the best you can with what you got, and know that you got a lot. Got a lot in your corner as far as your tools for navigating stress and difficulty goes. And you're an amazing human being. So just let those lights shine. Be yourself. Start singing. A lot of love. Be well.